Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Villain. My junior sisters are all black empresses. Chapter 11. At this moment, the string in Feng Qingling's heart seemed to be touched violently by something. No one had ever spoken to her so gently. From the time she was sensible, for more than 10 years, she had spoken to her every day. Living under the haze of master. Regardless of whether she has done something wrong or not, as soon as the master summons her, he will beat or scold her. Sometimes, he will even beat her until she faints and will not stop. She knows that the master despises her for being a little waste, and despises her. She has no talent for cultivation, and because she lives in a dark environment all year round, even the brothers and sisters outside all despise her. She thought that she had long been accustomed to this kind of gloomy life, and her weak character prevented her from resisting. But until now, when the senior brother in front of her pierced into her heart like a ray of the brightest sunshine, she realized that it turned out that she will also feel wronged and uncomfortable. There was deep grievance and gloom in his big watery eyes, and he quickly lowered his head, not daring to look at Su Ming again. Like an injured kitten, huddled tightly in its own corner, which makes people feel distressed. Su Ming originally wanted to reach out and touch her little head, but in the end his palm stayed in the air and did not put it down. His eyes were a little complicated. The girl in front of him might not be able to heal the wounds in her heart that easily. Does the wound hurt? He tried to speak to her in the gentlest tone possible. The red whip marks on the girl's crystal jade feet made her feel painful just by looking at them. There was no reason why she shouldn't feel pain. Feng Qingling bit her lower lip tightly and shook her head slowly. It doesn't hurt. Su Ming took a breath and ordered, "Come here and sit next to me. Don't kneel on the ground." Feng Qing's delicate body trembled slightly. She did not dare to resist. She gritted her teeth and stood up, lifted up her skirt, and then knelt down beside Su Ming. The wound on her leg was pulled, and she endured not saying a word, but her face became a little pale. I originally wanted to pour wine for Su Ming. As a result, Su Ming grabbed her little hand. "Senior brother." Feng Qingling's voice was trembling, with a hint of fear in her tone. She thought Su Ming was going to bully her. Su Ming held her wrist and said amusedly, "What are you afraid of? I have no interest in a little girl like you. Also, your pulse is so weak. Did you get injured while practicing? Your master didn't even teach you how to practice." Speaking of this, Feng Qingling did not dare to respond, because no matter whether she said it or not, she would definitely be beaten severely by her master in the end. Really? Su Ming fell behind. A cold snort came from the bedroom behind the screen. Hong Yu's beautiful and mature figure was lying lazily on the bed. She pouted at Su Ming and said, "With your eyesight, you can't see that this girl was born with blocked spiritual veins. If she hadn't, my mother has something to do with me, and I won't raise her like this. Even if she is raised, she will still be a little waste." Feng Qingling gritted her teeth and did not dare to say a word. Su Ming shook his head, raised his glass and took a sip. "If you are willing to teach her how to practice, maybe she will give you a surprise in the end." Hong Yu was disdainful. "If you can reach the realm of Nirvana, why don't you raise it and give it to the demon cultivators outside as a cauldron, and you can exchange some resources for me." "What a pity." Su Ming sighed. Feng Qingling lost her consciousness for a moment, her little face lost the last trace of blood, and her body kneeling on the ground could not stop trembling. Even if the master beat her and scolded her, she never thought that one day, the master would soon actually wants to give her to those bad people outside. Her eyes turned red, and crystal tears flowed from her eyes. Seeing her aggrieved look, Hong Yuli ignored her and smiled jokingly at Su Ming. "Why, you heard that I want to give her away. Are you heartbroken and reluctant to part with her?" Su Ming shrugged. "I just feel it's a pity that it's not cost-effective to give such a well-behaved and obedient junior sister to those guys." Hong Yu was lying on the bed, supporting her head with one palm, glanced at Su Ming behind the screen, and said with a lazy smile, "Then I will give her to you. Do you want it?" Feng Qingling was startled. She didn't know why, but when she heard her master say these words, all she could think of was the gentle figure of the senior brother in front of her, as well as his expression full of heartache and concern. With a gentle tone, if the master gave her to those people outside, she would want to die immediately, but if it were senior brother Su, deep down in her heart, there was a faint expectation and desire. Su Ming was also startled in his heart, but he quickly came to his senses. In mind, As expected, the system voice came. Ding, the host's current behavior is not in line with the villain's setting, and he should not feel pity for the girl of luck. This system recommends that the host refuses, otherwise unpredictable consequences may occur. Su Ming sighed in his heart. He had already suffered enough from the tragic endings of his previous 5 lives, so in this life, he didn't want anything beyond his control, and Feng Chingling was obviously full of uncertainty. So, he shook his head gently, smiled faintly at Hong Yu behind the screen and said, "Don't joke with me. Are you willing to raise me like this since you were a child? If it's those people outside who don't give me something that makes my heart move, I might really be reluctant to part with it, but if it's you, as long as you agree to a small condition, I will give her to you for free." Hong Yu replied. Su Ming thought for a moment and shook his head in refusal. Feng Chingling squeezed her little hand, and suddenly felt a cold despair in her heart. There were deep blood marks on the palm of her hand, but she seemed not to notice the slightest pain. She only knew that this was the only one who was good to her, the only one who allowed her to never stop. The senior brother who really felt warm in his heart also disliked her and refused to have her. Hong Yu sneered and asked, "Don't you like her?" Su Ming put down his wine glass, stood up calmly, patted the dust on his clothes, then stretched out his palm towards the junior sister who was kneeling next to him, and said with a warm smile, "Get up first." Feng Chingling raised her head and glanced at him, then turned her head away from him, not letting him touch her. Su Ming was startled. "It's funny in my heart. Is the junior sister angry with him? She has quite a personality and is quite cute." Then, regardless of Feng Chingling's resistance, he picked up the little girl from the ground. Shangshang's soft body struggled gently in his arms, almost making him lose control, and finally put her on a chair aside. While she was dazed, he squatted down and patted her little head. "Are you stupid? Being sent around by others is an item. In my heart, you have never been an item." The air seemed to have become silent at this moment. The candle next to it flickered with light. Just like Feng Chingling's beating heart, her heart was trembling fiercely. Her beautiful eyes were staring blankly at the gentle face in front of her. Suddenly, there seemed to be a strange force controlling her. Her eyes Yihong, desperate, threw herself into his arms. His head was buried in Su Ming's warm chest, and his tears silently wet his clothes. Even Su Ming was stunned by Feng Chingling's bold move. Then he patted her shoulder gently and smiled helplessly. Before he said the last words, Feng Chingling was in his eyes. Not an object, but his little junior sister, a living person. However, the junior sister seems to have misunderstood something. She shouldn't think that those words are a confession to her, right? Laugh. The next second, a long red whip burning with ghost fire directly split the screen in the room in half, and then whipped it fiercely towards Feng Chingling's back. The fierce whip due to the strength, not to mention the current Feng Chingling, I am afraid that even some strong men in the Nirvana realm would be beaten to a disability in an instant. Su Ming held Feng Chingling's delicate body in his arms. He raised his head indifferently. A cold, dark purple light flashed across his deep eyes. Then he raised his palm, and the red whip was firmly grasped in his hand. The terrifying strong wind spread along his palm, flying the wooden table next to it, but it could not hurt Feng Chingling in the slightest. Hong Yu stood up from the bed and stared at Su Ming with resentful eyes. "Don't you want her? I'm teaching my disciples that if you have the ability, just leave her alone." Feng Chingling was so scared that she hid in Su Ming's arms, hugging him tightly and not even daring to raise her head. Su Ming gently let go of the whip in his hand and said calmly to Hong Yu, "She has suffered so many injuries. As a senior brother, I can't ignore her. During this period, I will let her recover from her injuries first." Hong Yu gritted his teeth, but she suddenly saw Su Ming's cold and indifferent eyes, and her heart trembled. Thinking of how terrifying this man would be when he became truly cruel, she could only hum in the end, "I can follow you, then I will go find you. When the time comes, you are not allowed to refuse." Su Ming. There are some things that he really can't do. Outside the red frost forest, Su Ming stared at the towering peak in the distance, sensing the power of the seal within it, and was stunned for a moment. Behind, a series of soft, weak, and extremely pleasant voices came softly. "Senior brother, I will work hard to practice in the future. I will not hold senior brother back." Feng Chingling had already changed out of the ice silk suit that Hong Yu asked her to wear. Now she was only wearing an extremely thin cyan dress, but her whole body looked like Xiaojiabiu, with an indescribable fragile beauty. She followed Su Ming cautiously, her watery eyes automatically blocking out everything except the figure of the man in front of her. Su Ming turned around, stared at her calmly, and said in a cold voice, "Let's agree first, practice with me. I may be stricter than your master. If you can't stand it anymore, I will drive you back." Feng Qingling's face was serious and she nodded heavily. "As long as senior brother doesn't abandon me, I will do anything you ask me to do. Aren't you afraid that I am a bad person?" Feng Qingling's pretty face turned red, and she said softly, Even if senior brother is a bad guy, Linger is still willing." Su Ming stroked her forehead and flicked her little head. "Don't think blindly, I am your senior brother, and in my eyes, you are just a little sister." Feng Qingling hummed softly, but stared at Su Ming with her big eyes for a moment, then pursed her lips, and her face turned red unknowingly. Maybe Su Ming just treated her as a sister, but at this moment, in her heart, she didn't just treat him as a senior brother. At night, halfway up the Kaifeng mountain, among the towering ancient trees, there is a wooden building standing among them. Deep in the wooden house where spiritual power is dense. Feng Qingling's little face was almost red with blood. She hugged her legs and sat on the bed filled with Su Ming's scent. Her back was turned to her senior brother. Her clothes were pulled down a lot, revealing her crystal clear skin. Hiss. At a certain moment, she gritted her teeth gently. Su Ming frowned. "It will hurt a little at first, but I can endure the pain, and it won't hurt after a while." As he spoke, he applied elixir to the skin on her back. Although there was a hint of reprimand in his tone, Feng Qingling had never felt so warm in the past 10 years. From Su Ming's tone, she could tell that this senior brother cared about her, which made her she was extremely happy. "If only I could stay with my senior brother for the rest of my life. Senior brother, I don't feel any pain." She turned around and smiled sweetly. Su Ming. Why was he smiling so sweetly? He felt like he had miscalculated. He used to live alone, but now that he had brought Feng Qingling back, it was hard for her to live outside with her injuries. In the end, his bed was a matter of course. "I gave it to this little girl." The key is that Feng Qingling asked him innocently if her senior brother wanted to sleep with her. Su Ming was so angry that he flicked her little head. He didn't know what was going on in this little girl's head. Is he that kind of senior brother? I simply felt sorry for my junior sister, so I brought her back to avoid being accidentally beaten to death by Hong Yu's whip. Wait until the medicine is finished on the back. Feng Qingling put on her clothes shyly, and then turned around. She glanced at Su Ming secretly with her big black eyes. Her pretty face was red, and her whole body was like a young cherry, but full of youthful and attractive the taste of. Su Ming threw the medicine bottle to her and said indifferently, "Apply the rest of the medicine yourself, and then rest quickly. When you wake up tomorrow, the wound should be healed." Thinking of the lessons he learned from his previous 5 lives, he felt that what he did today might have been a bit impulsive. In his previous lives, it was not that there were no junior sisters who were close to him. Unfortunately, in the end, no matter what the reason was, those who were close to him junior sisters will all turn their backs on him. He had a premonition that he would bring Feng Qingling back from Hongyu and raise her up, but in the end, maybe this junior sister would betray him coldly and ruthlessly like Mu Chingan in the previous 5 lives. Treat his innocent concern for his junior sister as a ridiculous dog-licking image. Think of this. Su Ming sighed softly in his heart. Turn around indifferently and leave the room. Feng Qingling held the elixir and looked at Su Ming's back as he left indifferently. She felt a little sad in her heart. Why did her senior brother suddenly become so indifferent to her? It was obvious that he wasn't like this just now. Did she say something wrong that offended her senior brother? Not happy anymore. As the door was completely closed, Su Ming's figure disappeared from Feng Qingling's eyes. She bit her silver teeth lightly and her eyes became dim. She was already very sensitive, but at this moment she couldn't help but wonder if her senior brother had noticed that she had no cultivation talent, and started to dislike her just like her master, thinking that she was a useless little waste. Outside the wooden building, the mini-demon phoenix, whose whole body was burning with purple flames, was staying quietly in the yard. When it saw Su Ming coming out, its eyes lit up, and with a soft whine, it rushed to Su Ming's shoulder with flames all over its body. Su Ming smiled faintly and rubbed its head. During this time, thanks to this little guy looking after his house. I have something to go out for. No one is allowed in the back room. Demon Phoenix nodded. Su Ming took a step forward, and his body slowly disappeared into the darkness. Shenyan Sect, the forbidden area of Tianfeng. The mist-filled peak. Countless Shenyan Sect protector elders who were hiding in the dark suddenly noticed a vast abyss-like aura falling from the sky. All of their faces changed drastically, and they hurriedly emerged, looking at the sky with complicated eyes. In the eyes of all the guardian elders, a very cold man in white clothes, like a direct immortal, slowly descended from the sky. He was wearing a black and white mask, with the left side black and the right side white, making his face unreal, but the extraordinary temperament and cold and terrifying aura on his body made everyone here not dare to underestimate him. Who are you? Why did you come to the forbidden area of our Shenyan sect? An elder asked in a solemn voice. The man in white ignored him and looked at the dark sword tower behind the elders. In his mind, he slowly said, "Sign in, Tianfeng Tower." Ding, congratulations to the host for successfully signing in. The sign-in location is Shenyan Sect, Tianfeng Tower. Congratulations to the host for obtaining. Realm Breakthrough Pill ×10 can be used under the Spirit Master Realm. Congratulations to the host for obtaining. Chaos Holy Fruit. Close black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host for obtaining. Chaos Sword Demonic Body. Close black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the God level low level spiritual secret. Chaos Dragon Demonic Finger. Close black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the number of summons from the ancient white dragon guard, Sword God Leng Shi. Close black lens bracket. The sign-in has been completed. When the host villain points reach 10,000 points, the epic sign-in can be reopened. Seeing the rewards he received, Su Ming's heart moved. Sure enough, the more rich the spiritual power of heaven and earth is, the more generous the rewards you will get. This time you signed in, you actually got the number of summons from an ancient white dragon guard. Sword God Leng Shi, the ancient supreme white dragon guard, who has killed countless ancient dragons with his sword. His current cultivation level is at the peak of the spiritual sovereign realm. If you meet the conditions, you can advance to the God Emperor. This is a quasi-God Emperor level powerhouse. It's enough to walk sideways in the northern wasteland. At this time, among the guardian elders of Shenyan sect opposite, an elder at the peak of Nirvana realm stared at Su Ming in midair. Finally, something suddenly came to his mind, and he quietly took a step back, his face full of shock. Said with a trembling voice, "Black and white mask. I know, he is the black and white god lord who single-handedly destroyed the Yi family in Dongshuan domain a few months ago. Dozens of the Yi family's spiritual masters were all brutalized by him. Killing, I even heard that the ancestor of the Yi family who was half a god emperor also died in his hands. He is a true powerful god emperor, a terrifying existence on the same level as those legendary immortal emperors of the immortal dynasty. Why would someone like him come to our Shenyan sect?" The elder finished speaking. All the other elders were shocked, staring at the figure in front of them with disbelief, and everyone felt a deep chill from the bottom of their hearts. The leader of their Shenyan sect, who has the strongest cultivation level, is only at the spiritual sovereign realm. Compared with these half-step god emperors or even the powerful ones at the god emperor realm, there is simply a difference between heaven and earth. Such a person is probably even those immortal pilgrimage holy places don't dare to offend. Why would they come to their little Shenyan sect? If they get angry, I'm afraid that tonight, Shenyan sect will be wiped out overnight just like the Yi family in Dongshuan territory. Got it. The bodies of countless elders were trembling. Under the pressure of the vast spiritual power, they could not resist at all. The next second, all the elders hurriedly clasped their fists and bowed their heads, and respectfully spoke in the air. "We, the guardian elders of Shenyan sect, have met the Lord Shen." The voice was neat and there was no disrespect at all. However, no one in midair responded to them. It went like this for several minutes before anyone dared to raise their head and glance furtively in the air. Enter the eyes. In the cold and empty sky, there was no human figure anywhere, only a layer of clouds and mist drifting past. "It's so scary." All the elders breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly wiped the cold sweat from their foreheads. They felt both happy and scared at the same time. They felt that they could actually survive from the hands of a powerful god emperor who was so murderous. Thank God. Fortunately, the Divine King did not have murderous intentions towards them, otherwise, all he needed was a look, and I would be dead in an instant. Late at night, Mu Chingan's residence. In the room. Mu Chingan couldn't calm down to practice. She thought that today was the day when Su Ming was released from confinement, and she felt a little panicked. When she went to the dojo to practice tomorrow, the senior brother would definitely come to pester her again. It was like this before, and it annoyed her so much. Although she didn't know why, Su Ming didn't come to see her this afternoon, but she didn't believe that just a solitary confinement could make Su Ming change his past personality. That guy is a rogue. A certain piece of her intimate clothing is still in Su Ming's hands. She was so embarrassed and angry that she wanted to stab him with a sword. Mu Chingan forced herself to calm down, shook Su Ming's evil smile out of her mind, and started practicing while gritting her silver teeth. However, soon she noticed something was wrong. Before the skills in her body started to operate, the spiritual power around her body had automatically gathered. All the spiritual power of heaven and earth had gathered at the position of the Tianling cap. This strange scene made Mu Chingan a little panicked. But the next second, wait until she opens her eyes. A white nine-tailed fox appeared in front of her. It stood on all fours in the void, licking its fluffy tail while staring at her quietly. The pair of purple and green pupils are particularly beautiful. Mu Chingan's pretty face changed. Demon. The nine-tailed fox in midair glanced at her. I am not a demon. The cold female voice suddenly came to Mu Chingan's mind, and then a dazzling white light exploded in front of her. After the dazzling light dissipated, an enchanting face that could enchant all living beings appeared in her eyes. Who are you, the monster, who dares to come to our Shenyang sect and act recklessly? Mu Chingan stared at that beautiful and charming face and shouted coldly. Haha, I can destroy a mere Shenyang sect with just a snap of my fingers. However, I don't have any ill intentions when I come to you tonight. Mu Chingan was stunned for a moment. The nine-tailed demon fox curled his lips indifferently. I am here to tell you the hidden truth about a certain person. The truth. Mu Chingan didn't believe her at all. The nine-tailed demon fox smiled slightly. You don't really think that your senior brother is an uneducated villain who specializes in bullying weak people? What if I tell you that he is all pretending? Hear the words. Mu Chingan sneered. I know, you were sent by Su Ming, right? Does he really think he can deceive me with this kind of trick? Go back and tell him that if he has the ability, let him come to me in person. Don't do these sneaky things. Well, since you don't believe it, I'll let you see it for yourself. What's the meaning? After the demon fox finished speaking, before Mu Chingan could react, she suddenly found that she had lost control of her body. The demon fox soul rushed into her body with a whoosh, and then her consciousness was sealed into her mind. Mu Chingan could clearly feel that she could see the things in front of her, but she just couldn't control her body. She couldn't make any sound even if she wanted to speak. Her body was controlled by the nine-tailed demon fox. On the bed, the nine-tailed demon fox controlled Mu Chingan's body to open her eyes. Then she looked up at the void outside the room and laughed softly. You're already here, why don't you come down and meet me, senior brother Su? Mu Chingan was shocked. Su Ming was here too. The next moment, as expected, a figure in white clothes appeared in the room. This person was wearing a black and white mask. His whole person looked cold and noble. Coupled with his mysterious appearance and powerful methods, Mu Chingan didn't believe this person at all. How could it be Su Ming? The nine-tailed demon fox controlled Mu Chingan's body and took 2 steps forward, came to the man, stretched out her jade hand and gently touched his face, and smiled seductively. You think I don't know you are wearing a mask? Who is it? Su Ming stared at her with dark eyes. What do you want? The demon fox rolled his eyes at him. It must be what you want. I was practicing well in the Tianfang Tower. You suddenly ran in and scared me, and you kept chasing me. Do you have any thoughts about the slave family? Quote. Su Ming slapped her palm away, his eyes calm. This body does not belong to you. Come out as soon as possible and I will spare your life. The demon fox smiled foolishly. You care about your little junior sister so much. If I swallow her soul, she will become an idiot as soon as I leave. You can't swallow her imperial veins. If you don't try, how will you know? She might die. Su Ming smiled calmly. I don't care about her life or death. The demon fox took control of Mu Chingan's body, and suddenly wrapped his hands around his neck. He leaned over and said with a soft breath, "Do you really not care? Are you willing to let go of your little junior sister? In order to awaken the imperial vein for her, I cut one of my spiritual veins to give it to her, and now if you are willing to do it, just slap her to death." In the space of consciousness, Mu Chingan was stunned when she heard these words. What did the demon fox mean? What does it mean that the person in front of her cut off her own spiritual vein in order to awaken the imperial vein for her? What about this person? It might be Su Ming, but how could it be the senior brother that she hated so much? The corner of the demon fox's mouth raised. Also, the Mu family and Taichu Holy Land sent so many people here to take your little junior sister back, but all of them disappeared. Do you dare to say that this was not done by you? Quote. Su Ming stared at Mu Chingan's beautiful face close at hand, breathing in the alluring girlish fragrance of his junior sister. He stretched out his hand, opened Mu Chingan's hand, grabbed her wrist, and stared at her with a frown. You think too much and don't let her die because there is still Yu's value. To me, only her body has a little value. So, whatever you want to do, I still want to save her life. It works. The demon fox looked at him with a smile. Take off the mask, and I will tell you what I want to do. Su Ming sighed. The next second, suddenly, terrifying spiritual energy poured into Mu Chingan's body in his hand. The nine-tailed demon fox frowned and said coldly to him, Humph, you don't know the heart of a good person. Su Ming replied indifferently, No matter how you know, you'd better leave my affairs alone, otherwise, I won't mind completely erasing you from this world. The demon fox looked resentful. You fool, she hurt you like that, and you still protect her. If it weren't for her to know the truth, I would have swallowed her soul in one gulp. Hear this. On the contrary, Su Ming was stunned for a moment. The demon fox said that Mu Chingan had hurt him, but that happened in previous lives. In this life, the male protagonist had not gone up the mountain yet, and what the demon fox said had not happened yet. So, how did she know? There is only one possibility. This nine-tailed demon fox, like him, has memories of past lives. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain what happened today. Thinking of this, Su Ming's eyes changed. He slowly let go of Mu Chingan's hand and looked at her with complex eyes. He knew that at this moment, the body of the junior sister was the soul of a nine-tailed demon fox, and this demon fox was very. Maybe it was the one he had fought against for her in her previous life. The demon fox gently rubbed his wrist and said loudly, Since you said so, I have blocked her consciousness. Now, can you take off the mask? In the space of consciousness, Mu Chingan was stunned for a moment, blocking her consciousness. Then why could she still see everything happening in the room? This fox was lying to the man in front of her. Su Ming exhaled softly, I have my arrangements. Now, I can't let her know my identity. Said. He gently raised his palm and placed it on the mask. Mu Chingan's breath tightened. The next second, Mu Chingan suddenly felt like the world was spinning. She had never felt as panicked as she did now, deep in her heart. She would never believe that the mysterious and cold man in front of her would be her senior brother, the man she had been searching for months to help her awaken her imperial veins. However, when the next second comes, Mu Chingan was completely stunned. The world in her eyes seemed to have entered a space of black and white from the gray filled with cracks. Suddenly, all the colors were fixed on the man in front of her. After taking off the mask, Su Ming's face no longer showed the frivolous and unrestrained look she was familiar with, but an extremely cold indifference. In his pair of dark and deep eyes, there was no trace of the coveting he had for her at all. Instead, he looked very clean and thorough. He was dressed in white, and he looked just like the white-clothed immortal who often appeared in her dreams. No matter how she resisted, no matter how much she didn't believe it, this man was Su Ming, the senior brother she had always hated. Impossible. This is fake. This is impossible. Impossible. Hey, you think you can still live without any worries because of your imperial bloodline. It's really because of your luck. If it weren't for him, you would have died countless times now. The voice of the demon fox sounded in her mind. Mu Chingan's consciousness was completely confused, and finally she said stubbornly as if she refused to accept her fate, If it is true, then why did he do that to me in the first place? Do you really think he likes you, a young girl like you? Even if you didn't resist, he wouldn't do anything to you. Don't you think that since that incident, those around you have coveted your talent and appearance? Have all the villains disappeared? Mu Chingan was speechless. Indeed, since she first joined the Shenyan sect, she became a disciple at the 7th peak of Bai Qingshan. However, because of her extraordinary talent and extraordinary appearance, she also attracted the attention of countless disciples from the other peaks, and she was surrounded by some high-sounding disciples every day. In fact, he covets her senior brother. During that time, she couldn't calm down even while practicing. Until 3 months ago, senior brother Su Ming rushed into her room and verbally molested her on the pretext of delivering medicine. From then on, none of the senior brothers from other peaks dared to come to her side. Once people carefully recall those memories that they resisted before, they often find many details in them that they had not noticed before. This is the case with Mu Chingan. She thought about it carefully. Just discovered. When the eldest brother burst into the room, apart from teasing her with words, he didn't even touch her body. However, because she had just come out of the shower, she was so ashamed and angry that she thought her pure body was being peeped by Su Ming. Then you will be so angry that you will ignore countless things. If you still don't believe it, can I prove it to you? The demon fox said with a joking smile. As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Chingan was not given a chance to reply. In the room, the demon fox gave Su Ming a seductive look. She stretched out her hand and pulled off the ribbon on her head. Mu Chingan's thick and smooth long hair suddenly fell down like a waterfall and was scattered behind her. The clothes on her body also slipped gently, revealing the white and transparent skirt underneath. Under the short skirt, there were 2 slender white legs. Subsequently, her soft and watery body climbed onto Su Ming's body, her black and white eyes looked at him motionlessly, and her soft and moist lips quietly came closer. However, from the beginning to the end, the look in Su Ming's eyes was as calm as ever. It could even be said that there was no disturbance. He pushed away the girl who was close at hand and said indifferently, "You've had enough fun, come out." The demon fox was pushed away by him and hit his chest angrily, "Can you please stop being so cold? The little junior sister you miss so much is right in front of you, how can you still control it? Thinking about her day and night." Su Ming shook his head, "Then you were wrong. She is my junior sister. From the beginning, I only treated her as my own sister." "Wow, my dear sister, so exciting." The demon fox smiled slyly. Su Ming sighed, "Once her imperial veins are fully awakened in the future, she will encounter many disasters. I can only help her so much. From now on, she and I will be strangers and have nothing to do with each other. In her heart, she never regarded me as her senior brother. So there's no point in you hurting her." The demon fox curled his lips. "So, the goal has been achieved, and you are going to end your relationship with her in the future?" Su Ming didn't answer. The demon fox snorted coldly. "Silly, this is what you said yourself. You only regard her as your sister. In the future, I will also treat her as my sister." "You," Su Ming reacted and glanced at her, "I'm not interested in foxes." The demon fox was stunned, stared at him fiercely, and lowered his eyes. "Believe it or not, I will bite you." Su Ming, "Bite? Tell me clearly, where to bite?" The demon fox's pretty face turned rosy. She glared at Su Ming, and then her soul left Mu Chingan's body, transformed into a fox body again and flew into the air. The fox's tail was raised, and its fluffy tail gently caressed Su Ming's face. Said, "I, the 9-tailed Sky Fox clan, will only recognize one person in my life. You can sacrifice your life for me. In this life, I will defeat you. But now, I can't leave Tianfeng Tower. Maybe you don't know that after resisting the catastrophe for me, countless gods suddenly came to this world, and their target is that you have been in the catastrophe. The corpse of annihilation. Those people didn't tell us any truth, and they didn't find your body. With just one hand, they destroyed Bailing Realm, a holy place for immortals. In their eyes, they are even worse than ants. I guess they probably come from the legendary immortal realm that no one has ever been to. It is a more mysterious and terrifying place than all the divine realms outside the northern spiritual realm. And these people have only one purpose for coming, that is you." Hear this. Su Ming frowned slowly. He didn't even know that something like this happened after his death. A mysterious powerful man from the immortal realm came to find his body. What to do with his body? Are those people enemies? I don't know if you are an enemy, but they call you the abandoned son of the imperial clan. Everyone has a God realm judgment order in their hands. Do you want to know whose name is on the judgment order? Su Ming raised his eyes and stared into the eyes of the nine-tailed demon fox. Is it me? The judgment order of the God realm, one order determines life and death. It can be said that once a person is put on trial, no one can survive. Su Ming's heart trembled slightly. In this life, he thought that he had a system that could easily control everything and change the tragic fate of the previous 5 lives. However, only now did he know that he had actually been judged by the God realm. I'm afraid he would be counted as one by then. Even if he controls the entire Bailing realm in his hands, he can't withstand the arrival of powerful men from the God realm. Those are the real gods, supreme beings that surpass the emperor. This is all I know. When I come out of the Tianfeng Tower, if you are willing, you can follow me back to the nine-tailed Sky Fox clan. There is an ancestor in my clan who has lived for thousands of years. Maybe she can know about the trial order. I can break the seal now. Su Ming said. There's no need for that. Maybe your name has already been put on the trial order. It'll be safer if I break the seal myself. The demon fox finished. Finally, he glanced at Su Ming with some nostalgia, turned around and flew out, turning into a colorful rainbow of spiritual power, and silently entered the Tianfeng Tower. Su Ming withdrew his gaze. Mu Chingan's delicate body in front of her softened and she almost fell to the ground. Su Ming stepped forward and hugged her, laying her flat on the bed. Although his little junior sister's snow-white and alluring skin could be seen, his eyes were clear and he was talking to Mu Ching. The senior brother Yan knew at the beginning was completely different from the other person. Although Mu Chingan passed out, however, her consciousness was still clear, and she could still sense everything in the outside world. She struggled to open her eyes, and through the faint light, she could only see the cold figure of Su Ming covering her with a quilt, then turning around and leaving. Elder brother. At this moment, she tried hard to make a sound and tried to save him, but in her hoarse throat, she couldn't make any sound at all. She could only watch him leave without any regret. In the night, under the maple forest, the girl stood tall and graceful, holding a long black sword in her hand. Her eyes were staring at the blade of the sword, her eyes slightly dazed. Finally, she nodded firmly. If he dares to bully me, I will fight him. Who do you want to fight with? A clear voice came from behind. Yao Yao's pretty face was startled. She turned around quickly, hid the sword behind her back, and stared hatefully at the man who suddenly appeared in front of her. Why are you staring at me? Su Ming put his hands behind his back and looked at her with a funny look on his face. Yao Yao puffed her lips, moved a little, and put a little distance away from Su Ming. It's all because of you that the palace master deducted all my spiritual stones for a month. You are a harm to others. She was furious in her heart. She didn't care how much higher Su Ming was than her, she just wanted to say something to him. You're slanderous, aren't you? Yao Yao's pretty face turned red. You're shameless. It's obviously because of you today that I was given a spiritual stone by the palace master. Su Ming glanced at the long sword held behind her. Yao Yao's eyes were a little unnatural, and she quietly took a step back. I'm not a bad person, why are you so afraid of me? Su Ming took a step forward. Yao Yao was angry. You are a bad person. Everyone in the sect says you are bad, but you still touched my face in front of so many people today. By the end, she felt ashamed and angry. Su Ming suddenly realized, so you don't like crowded places. You should have told me earlier. It's dark and windy tonight, and no one will come here. It's perfect for us to do something. Ah, Yao Yao glared at him angrily, this shameless guy. You are not allowed to touch me, and you are not allowed to touch my face again. She took out her sword and warned coldly. Su Ming wanted to laugh when he saw it. This little girl actually smells like a naughty girl. I promise I won't touch your face. Su Mingyi spoke righteously and had the demeanor of a gentleman, but his eyes quietly moved down a little, bypassing Yao Yao's delicate collarbone, and glanced at the small hill. Before the little girl could react, he said in surprise, why? Feeling stunted and abused by your parents at home. Yao Yao was so angry that her pretty face turned red, and she was just about to cut him off with a sword. You were abused. My parents are so kind to me. Su Ming suddenly nodded. That's a matter of growth. It won't work if we go on like this. In the future, when we leave the Shenyan sect and see the female disciples from the immortal clan Holy Land outside, we will feel much inferior to ourselves. Come here and let me see if I can save you. Zhou Yao Yao. She took a sip. Now I finally understand. This guy is an out-and-out pervert, shameless and shameless. How did such a person become a senior brother? I heard that the noble and cool peak master of Kaifeng was very kind to him. Could it be that he was using the back door of that peak master? Zhou Yao Yao shook her little head to get rid of other thoughts in her mind, and stared at Su Ming expressionlessly. I have completed the instructions of the palace master. If there is nothing wrong with senior brother Su, I will leave first. She didn't want to stay here any longer. Su Ming did not stop him, but said leisurely, you don't want a month's worth of spiritual stones. Zhou Yao Yao gritted her teeth and said, just feed it to the dogs. Su Ming shook his head. This girl is not big, but she has quite a temper. He lightly snapped his fingers, the spirit ring on his right middle finger flickered slightly, and a spirit storage bag appeared in his hand. He waited with his fingers, and there was a sound of spiritual stones colliding in the bag. Zhou Yao Yao took a sneak peek and saw that it was actually a spirit storage bag. It is said that the spirit storage bag has its own space, which is made of extraterrestrial space stones. Although it is one level lower than the storage spirit ring, it is still a precious item that countless people cannot afford. With her family background, unless reward through the sect, otherwise you may not be able to use the spirit storage bag for the rest of your life. In the face of such temptation, no one can help but be tempted. Zhou Yao Yao turned her head, deliberately not looking at Su Ming. What do you want to do? Su Ming smiled slightly and said in his heart that you are still too young. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't be able to do it. Didn't you say that the spirit stone was taken away because of me? I will return the spirit stone to you. Zhou Yao Yao instantly raised her eyes and stared at him. Are you really willing to pay me back? It's a pity that someone just said she didn't want it anymore. When did I say it? I didn't say it. Zhou Yao Yao blushed and naturally couldn't admit it. Su Ming reminded in a quiet voice, didn't you tell me to feed the dog? Bark twice and listen, and I will return it to you. You bully people. Zhou Yao Yao's eyes turned red and she almost cried because of him. Su Ming smiled, walked around her, held the spirit storage bag in his hand, and walked leisurely towards the forest with his hands behind his back. Zhou Yao Yao stared at his back. She was unwilling to accept that her 1 month's worth of spiritual stones were gone. She also thought that except for touching her face at the beginning, this guy was always talkative and did not really bully her. The next second, his head as soon as he got hot, he suddenly puffed up his mouth and followed him. Su Ming turned around. Aren't you afraid of me anymore? Zhou Yao Yao bit her lip lightly. The sect competition is coming soon. These spirit stones are very important to me. I don't want to let myself down or let my parents down because of this matter. Su Ming was silent. It's rare to see this little girl looking serious. He stopped and pointed to the wooden house in the forest. Zhou Yao Yao looked in the direction of his finger and saw the room where Su Ming lived. She immediately thought of countless things in her mind. She shook her head hastily and refused with a red face. I don't do that kind of thing. Su Ming, that kind of thing. He stared at Zhou Yao Yao with a serious face and said earnestly, Junior sister Yao Yao, as a senior brother, I have to talk to you carefully. Do you know that your thoughts are very dangerous? Even though I am not a good person, I am. But, do you think I would take advantage of others' danger? Zhou Yao Yao secretly raised her head, glanced at him weakly, and then nodded heavily. Su Ming, do you still want the spirit stone? Think, call good brother, come and listen. I can't scream. Su Ming sighed, can you show some sincerity? Also, when I show you the house in front of you, do you want to make you think about those things? If a little girl like you takes off your clothes and gets on my bed, I have to kick her. Kick him down. What happened today, senior brother, was to help you get rid of the bad guys. Do you understand? You are new to the sect, so you will inevitably be remembered by others. As for asking you to come to me at night, I am just kidding you. You can't understand such a simple truth. If you still want to practice, go home and be a good boy to your parents. Su Ming said several words in one breath, with a hint of hatred in his tone. As for Zhou Yao Yao, After listening to Su Ming's words, she really became in a trance. She kept thinking about what Su Ming said in her mind. At the end of the thought, she couldn't help but stare into Su Ming's eyes and look at the clear and clean eyes of this senior brother's eyes. She was shocked. Indeed, before meeting Su Ming this morning, people would come to pester her every day. However, since this morning, during this day, all those people who used to pester her have disappeared. So, senior brother Su was actually helping her, not bullying her. Then her spirit stone. Su Ming threw the spirit storage bag into her hand, waved towards her and said, "Here are the spirit stones for you. It should be enough for you to practice until the sect competition. During this time, don't go to the Tafin Palace either. Practice with peace of mind. It's getting late today. Let's go back and rest first." Yao Yao looked at Su Ming in confusion. After realizing it, she felt a little panicked. "Don't rush to say thank you yet. There are conditions for helping you," Su Ming said calmly. "From now on, take an hour every afternoon to come over to my place and clean the house. Remember, you can't see a trace of dust, otherwise, I will collect the spirit stones. Return." Yao Yao looked at him in confusion. This moment, there seemed to be a voice deep in her heart telling her that in fact, senior brother Su in front of her was not that annoying. He seemed to be a bit handsome. The next day, morning comes. Kaifeng, Chunyuan Hall. This is a side hall set up on the top of Kaifeng Peak. The degree of spiritual energy concentration here is obviously much higher than in other places. It is also the place used by the core disciples of Kaifeng to practice. In the Chunyuan Hall, an elder from the Nirvana realm will come here every day to guide the disciples in their cultivation, whether it is spiritual cultivation or physical cultivation. For ordinary disciples in Kaifeng, it is not easy to enter the Chunyuan Hall to practice such a simple thing. Daily, there are only 20 places available. Except for core disciples like Su Ming, other ordinary disciples who want to enter Chunyuan Palace to practice have to defeat the core disciples who have obtained the quota to have a chance to win this quota. At this time, in the spacious and bright hall, there are wooden tables arranged neatly. In front of the wooden table, many boys and girls were sitting on their knees, and the atmosphere was extremely quiet. On the right side of the first row by the window, Mu Chingan was staring at the ground in a daze, her pretty face full of trance. Even her long hair was just tied up casually. She raised her head from time to time and glanced next to her. In the empty space, the whole person actually had a haggard and delicate feeling. At this time in the past, she always prayed in her heart that the owner of the seat next to her would not come, but now, she became inexplicably looking forward to it, looking forward to that person suddenly appearing, looking forward to seeing him, looking forward to him sitting on her again by my side, practicing with her. The elder in front is teaching the method of exhaling breath and absorbing spirit. All the disciples studied very seriously, but she was the only one who couldn't learn at all. Junior sister Mu. Suddenly, a rather delicate-looking senior brother behind her called her. Mu Chingan came back to her senses and looked up, only to find that all the senior brothers and sisters in the hall were looking at her. The elder in front sighed faintly. "If you don't want to learn my method of attracting spirits, you can go to the dojo to practice and give up your place. Give it to other disciples in need." Junior sister Mu, are you still thinking about senior brother? Don't worry, he has just been detained by master. He probably won't come to Chunyuan Hall in the past few days. Even if he comes, he won't dare to bully you again. A senior brother from behind comforted her. A senior sister in a colorful dress also comforted her softly. Junior sister Mu should be as lively and cheerful as before. Since that incident has passed, don't think about it anymore. If senior brother bullies you again, master and we won't let him go. Mu Chingan forced a smile. Thinking of the misunderstandings these senior brothers and sisters had about Su Ming, she suddenly felt a slight pang in her heart. It was all because of her, because she was stupid and did not see clearly the true face of her senior brother. Senior brother should be the best person to her in the world. But because of her, she was punished to the immortal prison and suffered 99 heavenly tribulations. The elder shook his head, glanced at the empty seat next to Mu Chingan, and reprimanded softly, "I am very happy that you can come here to practice on time every day, unlike some disciples who occupy the quota but no one can come. This is no good for children. Teach. Now that you are here, you should study more seriously." Mu Chingan suddenly raised her head, looked directly at the elder with cold eyes, and retorted loudly, "My senior brother went to the immortal prison to be punished during this period, and after he came back, he was imprisoned by the master. How could he come, and what qualifications do you have to criticize him?" Quote. The elder was so angry that he blew his beard, "How dare you contradict me? Do you still want to study here?" The other disciples were also shocked. She couldn't believe it in her heart. Junior sister Mu, who had always been obedient, dared to contradict Elder Yuan. Was it because of the senior brother who had bullied her and made her hate her so much? Junior sister Mu. Mu Chingan took a deep breath and stood up decisively. Ignoring the advice of the senior brothers and sisters around her, she turned around and left. "I don't want to stay anywhere without my senior brother. Leave this sentence behind." Her cold and decisive back made countless disciples in the hall shocked and speechless. However, before she could walk out of the hall. But his footsteps suddenly stopped, as if he sensed something, and he hurriedly looked up towards the door. In the sight, a man in white clothes was walking slowly under the sunshine outside the hall. He looked lazy, holding a spiritual pattern pen in his hand, turning the pen leisurely while looking towards this side with a half smile. "Come over." He had an inexplicably familiar smile on his lips, a frivolous expression, and a mocking gaze, but the disciples around him couldn't help but frown with disgust on their faces when they saw him. But when she saw this figure, Mu Chingan's expression suddenly tightened, and her heart suddenly became extremely panicked. The expression that was as cold as ice just now suddenly turned cold, and there was even a hint of surprise deep in her heart. Big brother. Although the other disciples were very reluctant, when Su Ming appeared at the door of the hall, they still bowed their heads slightly and saluted Su Ming. In any case, Su Ming is still the senior brother of Kaifeng in name. He is the same as the brothers of their disciples. Even if he is very reluctant, he still needs to have the proper etiquette. Wait until Su Ming approaches. Mu Chingan raised her little head and looked at him playfully. "Elder brother," she called softly. But the next second, she was stunned. Her eyes were slightly red, and she stared blankly. This senior brother walked directly past her, without even looking at her. His eyes were still filled with the kind of evil that she was familiar with, but she let her escape from it. I felt a deep sense of alienation and indifference. She thought of what her senior brother said last night. He said that the most difficult part of his imperial vein had awakened. He said that from now on, he and she would be strangers and would not interfere with each other. She thought the senior brother was joking. She thought that her senior brother would deliberately bully her today as usual. But, senior brother really wants to draw a clear line with her. Senior brother. And just when she was stunned, a soft voice suddenly sounded behind Su Ming. Mu Chingan looked over blankly, and saw a girl who looked petite and soft, with a hint of timidity on her pretty face, who was nervous. He followed Su Ming. After entering the hall, seeing so many people inside, the girl's little face became obviously panicked, and she weakly called out to Su Ming. Her red little mouth was pursed gently, and she followed Su Ming without daring to look around. Under the white cultivation force, she outlined well-developed and perfect curves, her skin was as white and tender as snow, her eyebrows were apricot, and her long hair was pulled up. A simple ponytail, slim and extraordinarily pure and weak. The appearance of the girl naturally attracted the attention of everyone in the hall instantly. Not only did the girl have that endearing and delicate temperament, but the looming beauty tear mole in the corner of her eye gave her even more. A beautiful and charming smell. She is such a rare beauty at such a young age. I can't imagine how stunningly beautiful she will be in the future. The atmosphere in the hall became quiet. Su Ming glanced at the empty seat in the front row and waved to Feng Chingling behind him. "See, go to that place to practice. After practicing at noon, go directly to the Lingshan Hall. Senior brother will buy you something delicious. Make up for it." Feng Chingling nervously grabbed the corner of his clothes and did not move. Su Ming touched her little head. His face no longer had the frivolous and evil look before, but became much softer. He said warmly, "Don't be afraid, no one here dares to bully you. You have just started practicing and you need a system. Please learn the method of attracting spirits, and when senior brother has time, I will teach you personally in the future." Feng Chingling raised her head and secretly glanced at the position in front of her. Then, she hesitated to speak. "What's wrong?" Su Ming was very patient. I don't know the road. Feng Qingling's face turned slightly red. Ever since she came to Shenyan sect with her master, she was basically not allowed to leave Hongshuang Forest and was not familiar with the sect at all. Then I'll pick you up, Su Ming asked tentatively. In fact, in her heart, Feng Qingling hoped that Su Ming could accompany her to practice and even teach her with his own hands. She really wanted to stay with him. But in the end, I thought that I was just a little waste now. If I didn't work hard to practice, what would I do if my senior brother was snatched away by others in the future? His eyes instantly became firm. She nodded lightly. Well, Linger listens to senior brother. Seeing this obedient look, Su Ming couldn't help but smile. The other disciples were also shocked. Many people didn't know the female disciple Hong Yu brought, so naturally they didn't know Feng Qingling in front of them. Everyone couldn't help but wonder, when did the senior brother recruit another junior sister to Kaifeng? Also, is this still the senior brother they are familiar with? The gentle and kind man in front of me, just like the big brother next door, is he really the senior brother who bullies his junior brothers and teases his junior sisters at will? Mu Chingan gritted her silver teeth and stared at Feng Qingling with a pair of beautiful eyes filled with jealousy. If she had not misunderstood her senior brother before, would he be so gentle to her now? The elder at the front of the hall frowned and stared at Su Ming. After glancing at Feng Qingling, he scolded coldly, as senior brother Kaifeng, I should lead by example. Have you forgotten the rules of Chunyuan Hall? In Chunyuan Hall, there are no cultivation places for ordinary disciples. Su Ming put the spirit pattern pen in Feng Qingling's little hand, patted her shoulder, go and sit down first. Feng Qingling only listened to his words. It could also be said that in this world now, she only listened to Su Ming's words. So, after Su Ming finished speaking, she took the spirit pattern pen and trotted to the front row, followed the example of the brothers and sisters around her, and knelt down to sit down. The elder's face turned dark. Su Ming was like an old father sending his daughter to school. He gave Feng Qingling a few serious words of advice before he looked up at the elder and said with confusion on his face, last night during the competition, I was defeated by this little junior sister. Come on, according to the rules, my place will be given to her. Does Elder Yuan have any objections? Elder Yuan, disciples around, senior brother, don't you blush when you brag. Your cultivation, which is at the peak of the Dan condensation realm and is about to enter the Nirvana realm, will be defeated by this little junior sister who is so weak that she doesn't have much spiritual power. I'm afraid the sun will rise from the west. Su Ming had said this, and the elder could not refute it. However, Su Ming was so angry that he was not in the mood to teach the students. He stood up, shook his sleeves, and walked into the inner room at the back. Continue practicing in half an hour. The elder was angered by Su Ming and left. Many disciples looked strange. Su Ming, however, had a leisurely look on his face. He turned around and glanced at Mu Chingan, who was standing at the door of the hall, looking at him. He looked away indifferently, hummed a tune in his mouth, and left straight away. Big brother, Mu Chingan called him. Su Ming raised the corner of his mouth and said, Junior sister Mu, is there something wrong? When the words came to her lips, Mu Chingan couldn't say them out. She wanted to apologize to Su Ming, but when she saw Su Ming's cold eyes changing from his normal, she suddenly felt uncomfortable. She also thought about what he had said to Feng Qingling just now. She looked so gentle. Not only was she uncomfortable, there was even a deep jealousy welling up deep in her heart. He is obviously his senior brother. Su Ming glanced at her sideways. Junior sister Mu, you can rest assured that senior brother will not harass you again in the future. As for your piece of underwear, I accidentally lost it, so I can't return it to you. If you don't mind, I'll compensate you. Your spirit stone. The words fell. Mu Chingan blurted out, I don't want it anymore. Su Ming. She raised her pretty face, held up a strand of black hair that fell in front of her eyes with her jade hands, and stared straight at her senior brother. At this moment, a rare rosy color appeared on her cheeks that were originally as cold as frost, and then, said softly, if senior brother likes it, Yunur will give it to you. Su Ming. Countermeasures. Or a honey trap. There must be something wrong with this girl's brain. He shook his head, waved his hands indifferently, and left. Mu Chingan looked at Su Ming's back and felt a pain in her heart. It was she who caused the eldest brother to be imprisoned in the immortal prison for 3 months and subjected to 9 days of thunder and tribulation every day. Now, the eldest brother must be very disappointed with her, and even hate her. No, I don't want my senior brother to hate me. I want to practice hard. I want to stand beside my senior brother. No matter what he does in the future, I will accompany him. Mu Chingan's eyes changed. She returned to the main hall and knelt down next to Chingling. Chingling was curiously holding the spirit pattern pen that Ming gave her and drawing spirit seals on the table in front of her. Her little face was full of seriousness. Although Hongyu didn't teach her how to practice, she was in Hongshuang Pavilion. She had read many books that Hongyu had brought back from outside, and there were many records of basic spiritual seals in them. At that time, she had already memorized them all. The 2 senior brothers in the second row stared at Chingling's petite and cute back with curiosity. One of them saw that she had drawn the wrong spiritual seal, and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Junior sister, this place is wrong. The spirit seal pays attention to the continuous formation of the strokes. If one stroke falls, if it cannot be connected, it will be useless. Hear the words. Many disciples around him cast their eyes on Chingling, with curiosity flashing in their eyes. Only, when the man finished speaking, Chingling ignored him at all. She just erased the wrong spiritual seal and started painting again. Seeing that Chingling was ignoring anyone, the senior brother touched his nose in embarrassment. Another senior brother said meaningfully to her, "We saw that you came here with the senior brother just now. Do you know that our senior brother is very hypocritical and likes to bully junior sisters?" Boom. Before he finished speaking, a newly formed blood spirit seal transformed into a large amount of blood and poured onto his body, instantly dyeing his clothes blood red. This senior brother was confused. When he reacted, there was another palm strike from beside him. The cold and merciless wind of the palm flew him away and he fell to the ground in a panic. The whole audience was shocked and speechless. Chingling turned around, the fragility in her eyes disappeared instantly, and she stared coldly at the senior brother with a pair of deep and beautiful eyes. Beside her, Mu Chingan's eyes were also filled with a faint murderous intent, and she was also staring at that person. No one expected that these 2 junior sisters would actually take action together just to protect the senior brother. The northern wasteland is located in the far north of the northern spirit realm. But no one knows that deep in the Beiwang Mountains, in the void space, there is an ancient bluestone palace that has stood here for thousands of years. In the ancient palace, it is a paradise land that is completely different from the outside world. It is full of ancient spiritual patterns. Each spiritual pattern exudes vitality and forms a space of its own. At this moment, next to a crystal clear stream condensed by pure spiritual power, under the tree of the red spirit holy fruit, 2 figures sat cross-legged, with a black and white chessboard between them. The chess pieces are fighting, and a faint sense of killing is circulating. There is a person on the left, dressed in white as snow, holding a black chip in his hand. Every time he makes a move, he looks extremely casual. On the contrary, opposite him is a middle-aged man in purple clothes. The middle-aged man has long hair tied back. He has an elegant face and exudes an elegant and simple atmosphere. By Zaluo, a smile appeared on the plain face of the middle-aged man in Zi. How about me? The chessboard is a dead end. The man in white was naturally Ming. His face was calm. He lost the chess game, but he didn't feel angry at all. He just raised the hot tea next to him and took a sip, shaking his head slightly, the purple-robed chess sage who was famous all over the world thousands of years ago. It would be strange if you lost. Hear the words. The middle-aged man in purple clothes was startled at first, and then suddenly laughed. We also played chess, let's talk about your business. Ming flicked his sleeves, and the chessboard in front of him suddenly turned into spiritual light points and disappeared. He put down his teacup and said meaningfully, when the great catastrophe of the northern wilderness begins, the chaos green lotus appears. When the time comes, I want you. Above the deserted city, open the secret realm of the heavenly demon. Oh, the middle-aged man in purple's eyes changed, are you sure? He said solemnly. If no one can subdue those 10 ancient demons, I'm afraid the entire northern wilderness territory will be devastated. Life is ruined. Ming sneered. Don't you have a crush on a man named Lin, and are you going to pass on your life's earnings to him? Do you think he can subdue those 10 celestial demons? Zi Wuji shook his head. What I'm interested in is his great luck. This man has the luck of the golden dragon. If he doesn't die young, he will definitely reach the pinnacle of the Great Road in the future. His name is Lin Changfang, right? Zi Wuji touched his chin and said doubtfully. I just don't know why, but these days I suddenly feel that the golden dragon luck in his body has become much weaker. It seems that he must have encountered some life or death danger. Su Ming changed the subject. Besides you, is there anyone else staring at him? This is inevitable. A person with the luck of a golden dragon will even attract the attention of countless old monsters in the god realm. Some people may take action when he encounters a life or death danger to help him survive the disaster. Su Ming drank tea again. After drinking, he stood up and prepared to leave. He already knew what he wanted to know. Zi Wuji watched Su Ming pick 2 red spirit sacred fruits from the ancient tree next to him. His face darkened. I have only produced 1 fruit in the past 100 years, and there are not many left in total. You can pick them for me at once, too. Don't be so stingy. Su Ming turned his back to him and waved. Next time I come, I will bring you something good. After saying that, his body turned into little auras and disappeared. Zi Wuji almost spit out a mouthful of old blood. He said why this guy came to him suddenly, apart from the matter of the heavenly demon's secret realm, was because he was greedy for his holy fruit. But, Zi Wuji sighed softly in his heart. Such a monster appeared in the northern wasteland. He even had a premonition that Su Ming might be even more powerful and terrifying than the future Lin Changfang who had the luck of the golden dragon. Su Ming's current strength, he has no doubt, it just depends on whose hands the ancient chaotic green lotus finally falls into. Anyway, he will not offend Su Ming for Lin Changfang. Immortal Prison has a close relationship with Su Ming, which means that the Liu clan Immortal Dynasty will most likely side with Su Ming. Those guys in the God realm will have to leave in the end. You shot yourself in the foot, otherwise, it would be fun. When Su Ming returned to Shenyang sect, he discovered that his junior brother Lu Jalin, who had been taught a lesson by him some time ago, was contracting a spiritual beast in the jungle behind the main peak. It was a red-fronted wolf in the late stage of Guiyuan realm. It was originally kept in captivity in the back mountain of Kaifeng for the disciples to use after they reached the level of cultivation. Unfortunately, this red-fronted wolf had a rather violent personality. Lu Jalin kept using the spirit seal. After restraining it, it still managed to break free fiercely, leaving the boy in a state of disarray. There were many disciples around who were paying attention to Lu Jalin. Seeing that he could not tame this spiritual beast, several female disciples covered their mouths and smiled, saying, Junior brother Lu, this red-fronted wolf is very proud. Some time ago, senior brother Feiyu from Yifeng also tried to tame him, but in the end he failed. If you can make a successful contract, you will be even more powerful than that senior brother Feiyu. Even more awesome. Several other male disciples also laughed, unable to avoid gloating. Senior brother Feiyu is the senior brother of Yifeng. Now his cultivation has already entered the half-step of Nirvana. Even he can't tame this little wolf. Junior brother Lu probably has a lot of trouble. In the forest glade, the red-fronted wolf once again broke free from the spiritual seal on his body, roared upwards, and knocked Lu Jalin away fiercely. Ha ha ha! Lu Jalin fell to the ground in embarrassment, rolled over, and had several holes in his clothes. Seeing this scene, the brothers and sisters around him burst out laughing at his funny appearance. Lu Jalin quickly got up from the ground. When he heard the laughter of those around him, his face turned red and he felt extremely embarrassed. He quickly glanced at the red-fronted wolf in front of him, gritted his teeth for the last time, lowered his head and turned around, feeling embarrassed. I just want to get out of here quickly. However, just ran out for 2 steps. He suddenly froze, as if sensing something, and looked up blankly. Not far ahead, he saw a cold figure in white leaning against a tree trunk, arms folded, looking at him lazily. Elder brother. When he came back to his senses, he felt that he had been really embarrassed today. Not only had he lost his own face, but he had also lost the face of Kaifeng. He thought that the eldest brother had seen all the embarrassing looks he had just seen. He had lost his face some time ago. He actually overestimated his ability and wanted to challenge his senior brother. He was so embarrassed that he wanted to find a hole in the ground to crawl into, but he felt that he had no face to face him. Lu Jalin lowered his head, not daring to look at Su Ming, turned around and left quickly. As a result, I accidentally returned to the place where I was just now. Because I was distracted, I was knocked out by the red-fronted wolf again. This time it knocked down a huge tree trunk. My back instantly turned red, and I fell to the ground with pain on my face. Underground, everyone around burst into laughter. This kid still doesn't give up. Don't you know what we just said is ironic? Even senior brother Feiyu can't contract this spirit wolf. Even if Lu Jalin has some talent, can he be better than senior brother Feiyu? Haha, I was laughing so hard. Not to mention, this guy was particularly happy when he was knocked away. Hearing those laughter, Lu Jalin gritted his teeth in his heart. But he couldn't help but secretly turned his head to look in a certain direction. At that place, the senior brother was still looking at him with a lazy and calm expression. Hey, is it the senior brother from Kaifeng? I heard that after he came back from the immortal prison, he was imprisoned by the Peak Master of the Seven Peaks. Unexpectedly, he was released. Doesn't he also want to contract with this red-fronted wolf? It is said that his cultivation level is the same as that of senior brother Feiyu from Yifeng. They are both in the half-step Nirvana realm. Even senior brother Feiyu failed in his contract, how can he still be better than senior brother Feiyu? Some people around noticed Su Ming. Looking at the senior brother of Kaifeng, they couldn't help but whisper to each other. But most of them tutted and shook their heads. Senior brother Feiyu of Yifeng, his full name is Long Feiyu. He is not only the senior brother of Yifeng, but also the next black armored guard of Wangchang. Since he entered the half-step of Nirvana, he usually stays in Wangchang to practice and rarely returns to the sect. It is the dream of many disciples to be selected into the black armored guards of Wangchang. One can imagine how talented senior brother Feiyu is. Anyway, in the eyes of these people, Su Ming was not selected by Wangchang, which meant that his talent and strength were not as good as Long Feiyu. Long Feiyu had failed, and even if Su Ming came, it would probably be a joke. Their laughter reached Lu Xiaolin's ears, and Lu Xiaolin blushed. Grab the sword beside you and get up. Even if Su Ming once teased his junior sister and contradicted his master, no matter what. He is also the senior brother of Kaifeng, and is the leader of all the disciples of Kaifeng. Outside, these people could laugh at him, Lu Xiaolin, but they couldn't laugh at Su Ming. Because that would mean laughing at their Kaifeng and looking down on all their disciples. With a cold light bursting out of his eyes, Lu Xiaolin looked directly at the red-fronted wolf in front of him. Spirit beasts have powerful physiques, and are generally several times stronger than human cultivators at the same level. Otherwise, Lu Xiaolin would not be so embarrassed. Since the contract couldn't be concluded now, Lu Xiaolin was cruel and simply killed it. No one wants to make a contract. He poured spiritual power into the long sword, and his body flashed, and a step appeared in the air. He slashed hard at the red-fronted wolf's head. This kid is crazy, he wants to kill the red-front wolf. Should we stop him? Why are you trying to stop him? Even though the red-front wolf is only at the middle stage of Guiyuan realm. But even if senior brother Feiyu comes, he may not be able to kill it. Quote, it's just that this kid is asking for trouble. Just watch how he was tortured and let him remember it. On the open ground, Lu Xiaolin's sword struck the air as expected. The red-fronted wolf was as fast as lightning, and its silver-white body only flashed slightly. Just avoided his attack. Lu Xiaolin looked dissatisfied and turned around with a sword. Boom! The red-fronted wolf's eyes were cold and he withstood his sword forcefully. Then he bit his arm with his mouth, and his long fangs tore off a large piece of flesh and blood, then flicked it aside again. Hiss! Lu Xiaolin sucked in a breath of air from the pain, and then the red-front wolf didn't give him a chance to breathe at all. A claw swatted him away. Seeing blood, any spiritual beast will become more manic. Lu Xiaolin felt the fear of death deep in his heart. He saw the red-fronted wolf's fangs dripping with blood. He saw the disciples around him who were laughing at him, and even more so, Su Ming's eyes shook his head in disappointment. I'm not afraid of death. Stimulated, he roared. He grabbed the long sword next to him and wanted to rush forward and fight the red-fronted wolf. Buzz! But the next second, an unknown powerful energy suddenly surged in, and he was stunned, as if his body was imprisoned by something. He could only stand there unable to move. The red-fronted wolf on the opposite side even lay on the ground, wailing in fear. The disciples around him were also stunned for a moment. He quickly turned his head and looked at the position behind him. Su Ming took action. Except for Su Ming, no one would help Lu Jalin in this place. However, isn't Su Ming only half-stepped to the level of Nirvana? Even if he takes action, he can't subdue the Red Front Wolf instantly. Many disciples looked shocked and looked around hurriedly to see if any elder from the Nirvana realm was helping Lu Jalin. At this time, but he saw the senior brother from Kaifeng slowly lowering his arms and raising a finger. Lu Jalin, who was in the clearing, also raised his sword. Su Ming tapped the air lightly with his fingertips. The long sword in Lu Xiaolin's hand instantly turned into a stream of cyan light and flew out. Laugh. The long sword passed by and pierced the ground in front of the red-fronted wolf. The sword tail buzzed and trembled. On the left side of the red-front wolf's face, a long bloodstain quietly appeared. At this moment, the red-fronted wolf stared at the long sword in front of him with fear in his eyes. He lay prone on the ground, not daring to even move. Lu Xiaolin was also shocked. Some turned back in disbelief. Many disciples around him also looked at Su Ming blankly, with deep shock in their eyes. Controlling spirits through space. It's really like being able to control spirits from afar. That is a powerful method that only those in the Nirvana realm can control. This senior brother of Kaifeng can actually control spirits through the air. Could it be said that he has already entered the realm of Nirvana? How can it be? He is barely 20 years old. A powerful man in the Nirvana realm who is less than 20 years old. This is a rare existence not only in their Shenyang sect, but also in the entire northern wilderness territory. They simply couldn't believe that Su Ming would be a strong man in the Nirvana realm. But in the current scene, if there weren't elders secretly helping Lu Xiaolin. So no matter how hard they believe it, they still have to believe it. Elder brother, Lu Xiaolin said in a daze, looking at Su Ming with moving eyes. Under the maple tree, Su Ming glanced at him. You can't stand such a little stimulation, so don't call me senior brother. It's embarrassing, he mocked softly. Lu Xiaolin's face turned even redder and he wanted to refute, but he didn't know what to say. Su Ming looked at the blood still flowing from his right arm, shook his head, and said indifferently. If you contract such a waste, your future journey will stop here. If you want to be a waste, you can contract it now. Lu Xiaolin gritted his teeth and looked at the red-fronted wolf lying on the ground in fear. Something in his heart seemed to be stimulated. This kind of spiritual beast, which only knows fear when faced with oppression, is not worthy of being his contracted beast. He never wants to disappoint his senior brother. I don't want to be the loser who never grows up in the eyes of my senior brother. Lu Xiaolin rushed over and pulled out his long sword, staring at the red-front wolf coldly. Sooner or later, I will rely on my own strength to make you kneel in front of me like today. Finished. Turn around and leave. He had no nostalgia for the red-fronted wolf that was now at his fingertips. Just now I tried desperately to contract it. But now, he just thinks it's ridiculous. Walking not far in front of Su Ming, Lu Xiaolin saluted with respect, senior brother. Su Ming glanced at him and ignored him. Then he turned around indifferently and left here. Lu Xiaolin wanted to follow, but after thinking about it, he hesitated and finally gritted his teeth. He has to practice hard, and he has to show his true strength in the sect competition to show his senior brother that he is not a waste. And looked at Su Ming's retreating back. The expressions of those disciples who were still laughing at Lu Xiaolin just now had already changed. All the female disciples stared deeply at the place where Su Ming left. His cold and slender figure was reflected in their beautiful eyes. Many female disciples felt their hearts tremble. Once word spreads about a Nirvana realm expert who is less than 20 years old, the entire sect will probably be shaken. Even if he has done some bad things in the past, that is all in the past. In addition, this senior brother Kaifeng is not bad looking, with a handsome and charming appearance, and a mysterious life experience. His current cultivation level is enough to become an elder of the Shenyang sect. After thinking about it, the pretty faces of some female disciples couldn't help but turn slightly rosy, and their eyes stared blankly at the place where Su Ming left. He has strength, talent, evil looks, and a cold and noble temperament. Even if he had some small hobbies, it is not incomprehensible. 7 Peaks, Mountainside. In the boudoir, Bai Qingshan was sitting on the bed, her cold and noble beautiful face covered with frost, and not far from her right hand was an elegant and extremely beautiful woman in a snow dress. Chin-ru, considering our 20-year friendship, I won't argue with you about this matter. But in the future, if you mention it again, don't blame me for falling out with you. Bai Qingxian said coldly. The woman in the snow skirt in front of her is Chin-ru, her sister who has been friends with her for more than 20 years, and the leader of the Purple Ling sect in the Beiwang Mountains. The Purple Ling sect is not very powerful, but it is famous in the northern wasteland because the sect only recruits female disciples. In terms of strength, it ranks only behind the 5 major sects. But today, Chin-ru suddenly came to her and said that the Purple Ling sect had accepted a new female disciple and a wedding ceremony was needed to awaken her special physique. She also knew that her disciple Su Ming had good talents and cultivation, so he came to her and asked her to lend Su Ming to the Purple Ling sect. Bai Qingxian is not the kind of little girl who just started practicing and doesn't understand anything. She naturally knows what the so-called wedding ceremony means. That is already considered an evil cultivation method. The marriage of a man and a woman is used as a sacrifice, and the spiritual power is used as a drink. On the night of the wedding, the pure spiritual power in the man's body is used to open the special yin spiritual veins for the woman. Once successful, it will be of great benefit to the woman, and she can even soar into the sky and obtain terrifying cultivation talents. The higher the man's cultivation talent, the greater the benefits the woman will gain. She knew that Chin-ru was not willing to let the Purple Ling sect be inferior to the 5 major sects, but the consequences of this method were too serious. Once the awakening fails, both men and women will lose all their cultivation and will become useless people who cannot practice from now on. Even though Su Ming made her extremely disappointed, after all, he was the disciple she raised with her own hands, so she certainly wouldn't let Su Ming take this risk. What's more, this method is only beneficial to the woman, and it can be said to have no benefit to the man. The biggest benefit may be to marry a wife who has no emotional basis. Therefore, Bai Qingxian decisively rejected Chin-ru. As the head of a sect, Chin-ru not only has an elegant and glamorous temperament but also a touch of majesty. 3,000 black hairs are coiled on her head, and her smooth skin is even more crystal white and tender than that of a teenage girl. Her willow eyebrows were raised slightly, and under her slender eyelashes, there was a pair of beautiful phoenix eyes that seemed to be full of charm. Her tender red mouth curled slightly, and she said in a calm voice, "I will give your disciple a wife. Why are you so anxious to refuse? I'm afraid your disciple will be eaten by me." Bai Qingxian knew her character. Once he set his sights on something, he would never give up until he got it. But for Su Ming, she couldn't give it to her. Outside of the Shenyang sect, there are so many men with good talents. Why do they choose my disciples? Chin-ru pouted, staring at Bai Qingxian with a pair of watery, beautiful eyes. I mean, little Xuanxuan, we are still not biological sisters. My little apprentice has a body of pure yin that only happens once in 10,000 years, and he has an innocent body. Can I feel safe marrying those men outside? The disciple who marries you will become a family in the future. Wouldn't it be beautiful for you and me to join forces? Bai Qingxian still had a cold face. That won't work either. Chin-ru spat softly and sat aside angrily. Under her slender waist, her 2 fair and slender jade legs were raised up. Then she kicked the chair next to her hard. How can you be such a sister? This is not a bad thing for your disciple. With his talent, there is at least a 90% chance that he can awaken successfully. You are a bad woman, don't you want to see me? Bai Qingxian. She glanced at Chin-ru's pair of round and smooth jade legs, and moved her eyes upwards. This girl had a better figure than her, and was a little taller than her. The ravine was deep and big, and just those slender white jade legs, I'm afraid it can shake the minds of countless men. She sighed inwardly, the coldness on her face subsided a little, and said rather helplessly, Miss, Su Ming is my senior brother in Kaifeng, and he is also the one with the highest cultivation level among all the disciples. I still hope that he will succeed in the sect. You won the first place in the door competition, so you can gain some face for me. You want him to leave, what should I do? Chin-ru bulged her mouth and her eyes moved. Then she suddenly remembered something, stared at Bai Qingxian and said strangely, be honest, do you want to keep it for yourself? Bai Qingxian's pretty face darkened. Hey, can you be more serious? That's my disciple. I know I shouldn't say this to you. You're blushing. Bai Qingshan hurriedly covered his cheek. Qinru smiled mysteriously. Don't bring it upon yourself. I have met Su Ming before. He is as gentle as jade and a gentle gentleman. I know that you, a girl, can't control you. It would be great if you let me come. Bai Qingshan raised his head and glared at her. I'm angry with you. Qinru waved her hand. I just want to ask you one thing. Do you want to give it to me? No, that's what you said. Bai Qingshan bit his lip slightly and reminded. I advise you to stay away from evil cultivators. Once discovered by the immortal prison, I will not be able to save you. Qinru took a gentle breath of air, and the fullness in her chest rose and fell slightly. She stared at Bai Qingshan with her beautiful eyes. If one day I am captured by the immortal prison, can you really remain indifferent? Bai Qingshan nodded. You deserve it. I have no love at all. It's in vain that I think about you. If you don't give Su Ming to me, you will never be able to heal my wounded heart in your lifetime. Bai Qingshan was speechless. Why does it involve Su Ming again? Qinru gently shook her white and tender legs, her small toes tapping the chair next to her. Then she said with a royal accent, Sister, I have seen all the people since I was single until now. Among men, only your Su Ming makes me feel very different. If it weren't for the purpose of awakening the physique of my little disciple, after 2 years, I might have to use some means to attack him first. Bai Qingshan. Sure enough, it was still the Qinru she knew. You old woman, if you dare to touch my disciple, your legs will be broken. Qinru curled her lips and said, just tell me whether you will give it or not. If you don't give it, I will come to you every day from tomorrow on and try different tricks to tease him. Since you won't let him marry my disciple, then I will raise his seniority to 1 level and make you mad to death. Bai Qingshan was really angry. He glared at her angrily. You still want to be shameless. I only want men, no shame. ... You can choose another one. Except for Su Ming, I will consider the other disciples. If you don't change, I'll ask Su Ming. No need to talk. No need to talk. No need to talk. If you don't give it, I will seduce him myself. Ah, Bai Qingshan was so angry that he wanted to bite her. Doesn't she still know how much of that person Su Ming is now? If he lets him marry that little girl, wouldn't that be a disaster to others? I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.